You keep chasing what runs from you. Love, approval, closure. Every time you reach out, it slips through your fingers, and still, you run after it. You call it hope. You call it love. But deep down, you know it's hunger. A quiet, endless hunger for something that once promised to fill you and never did. You tell yourself that patience is strength, that goodness will return the favor one day. You keep giving more, waiting for the world to see your heart and treat it gently. But life is not built that way. People are not built that way. And the more you chase, the smaller you feel. You've been told to be kind, to forgive, to stay soft. But no one told you that softness without boundaries becomes a wound that never closes. No one warned you that sometimes, in trying to prove your worth, you handed away. You believed love would recognize you, that if you stayed long enough, gave enough, endured enough, it would see you. But love without respect is not love. It's dependency wearing perfume. You're tired of running. You're tired of begging for something that should have been mutual. You want peace, but not the kind that comes from pretending you're fine. You want strength, but not the kind that turns you cold. You want control, not over others, but over yourself, over the storm inside you. That's what this story is about. Not control as manipulation, but control as clarity. The quiet, unshakable power that comes when you stop chasing and start standing still. When you realize that what's meant for you cannot be persuaded, only recognized, and that the moment you stop trying to win people, you begin to win yourself back. There's a line people often misunderstand. It is better to be feared than love. They hear arrogance, but what Machiavelli meant was something else. When love is pure, it uplifts you. But when it's conditional, it weakens you. If you must choose, choose respect. Choose boundaries that protect your spirit from being drained by those who take without giving. You've been taught to be good, not strong. But goodness without strength becomes sacrifice without meaning, and kindness without clarity becomes self-erasure. You don't need to become cruel to stop being powerless. You need to see the truth. You need to understand that power is not loud. It's presence. It's the silence that makes others listen. It's the calm refusal to explain your worth ever again. The power you seek is not out there. It's the ability to hold your own heart without letting others bruise it, to love without losing yourself, to walk away without hating them, to know when someone's affection is an illusion dressed as care. This story will take you there gently, through the illusions we build, through the strength we bury, through the truth that hurts but frees. Because once you understand the law of control, not control over others, but over your own reactions, everything shifts. You no longer beg life to be kind. You meet it on your feet. If this speaks to something quiet inside you, stay. This is not a lecture. It's a conversation. You and me, in the dark. Two people who've lost too much pretending that being good was enough. And as we walk through these words, if you find yourself breathing easier, if something feels seen, then stay connected. Follow this space. Share it with someone who still chases what hurts them. Because maybe, just maybe, this time the truth won't destroy you. It will set you free. You start to see it one day, how every pursuit of love feels like running through fog. You think you're getting closer, but all you touch is air. You call, and no one answers. You give, and it vanishes into silence. You wonder if something's wrong with you, if you're too much, too needy, too intense. But it's not that. It's that you were taught to earn what should have been given freely. Somewhere along the way, someone convinced you that love must be chaste, that it's noble to suffer for connection, that patience makes you worthy, that the universe rewards those who wait. But waiting too long turns your heart to water. You dissolve into other people's tides, their moods, their indifference, their leaving. You become addicted to potential, to the idea that if you just do everything right, someone will finally stay. You mistake persistence for love, but persistence is a slow form of begging when it's not met halfway. And I know you stayed because leaving felt like failure, because you wanted to prove that your love could fix what others broke. You thought that if you held on long enough, the story would change. But here's the quiet truth. The story doesn't change because you suffer harder. The story changes when you stop performing goodness and start reclaiming dignity. There's a strange kind of peace that comes when you stop apologizing for wanting more. You stop twisting yourself into shapes to fit someone's comfort. You stop measuring your worth by how much they need you, because that's not love. That's survival, disguised as devotion. It's the same lesson Machiavelli whispered through centuries of misunderstanding, that appearances are powerful, but not as powerful as control. And control begins with one choice: to stop reacting. You don't need to chase when you trust your own gravity. You don't need to plead when you understand that real love does not demand sacrifice of self. Power doesn't come from domination. It comes from direction, from knowing where you end and where others begin. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to stop explaining, stop convincing, stop performing goodness for people who only understand power. Let them misunderstand you. Let them call you cold. They're not used to boundaries, they mistake them for distance. You've spent years believing that being loved meant being understood, but it's not always so. Some will love the way you make them feel, not who you are. They'll want your warmth, your forgiveness, your stability, until it costs them effort. And when it does, they'll retreat, leaving you with questions you'll never get answers to. Here's what you need to remember. You don't owe anyone proof of your softness. The world has already seen enough of your giving. What it hasn't seen is your silence, your refusal, your decision to walk away, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Because when you stop chasing, something happens inside you. The noise quiets. You start hearing your own voice again. You start to notice how much of your life was spent trying to control how others see you. Every text, every smile, every apology, tiny attempts to manage someone's perception of you. But the truth is, people will see what they want to see. They'll twist your meaning to fit their story. And the only power that remains is how you respond or don't. Sometimes control is not in action, but in restraint. In not showing your pain to those who caused it. In letting silence become your final word. The world teaches you to fear detachment, to think that distance means coldness. But detachment, when born from clarity, is not cold. It's sacred. It's the ability to love without losing yourself. It's loving like water, soft but uncontainable. Remember this: those who chase are always negotiating. Those who stand still are always choosing. And power lives in choosing. Maybe you were never supposed to be endlessly understanding. Maybe your role isn't to forgive what keeps breaking you. Maybe your healing begins not in trying harder, but in finally saying, enough. Enough of being the one who holds it together. Enough of being the one who loves first, forgives first, waits longest. You've mistaken endurance for loyalty. But endurance without reciprocity is self-abandonment. You're not meant to chase. You're meant to attract through stillness, through truth, through the quiet magnetism of self-respect. Because people feel when you've stopped begging. They feel when you've returned to yourself. And suddenly, the ones who used to take you for granted begin to notice what they've lost, not because you've become colder, but because you've become complete. That's the paradox of control. The less you need to prove, the more power you hold. The moment you no longer seek validation, you become the source of it. And that energy, quiet, grounded, unbothered, is what life responds to. The universe doesn't reward desperation. It mirrors energy. And desperation tells it, I lack. But self-trust whispers, I already am. That's when things begin to turn. When you finally stop asking, why didn't they love me? And start asking, why did I need them to? That question, that single shift, changes everything. You start seeing patterns that were invisible before. The friends who only appeared when you were useful. The lovers who adored your light but never learned to share theirs. The family who praised your strength but never asked what it cost you. You realize that your goodness was never the problem. It was your attachment to proving it. You kept trying to show your heart to people who could only see your hands, the ones that gave, carried, built, fixed. They never saw the exhaustion behind your smile. Now it's time to reclaim what was always yours, your presence. Not the mask you wear to be loved, but the quiet truth beneath it. You don't have to chase what you can attract through authenticity. You don't have to run after what will find you when you're standing still. The lion doesn't beg for loyalty. The fox doesn't explain its cleverness. They simply exist in their nature unapologetically. So should you. There comes a point when you look back at all the times you bent yourself in half just to be accepted, and you start to tremble. Not because of shame, but because you realize how far you went to be loved. You remember the nights you stayed awake, replaying conversations, searching for the exact word or gesture that made someone drift away. You tried to be everything: kind, forgiving, patient, and yet, it was never enough. But what if it was never supposed to be enough? What if the goal was never to win them, but to wake yourself? You see, the moment you start chasing someone's attention, you unconsciously tell them they are the source of your peace. And once you do, you hand them power over your self-worth. Every time you check your phone, waiting for their reply, you're saying, "You decide if I matter today." Every time you over-explain your intentions, you're saying, "Please don't misunderstand me. I can't bear to lose you." And that's the illusion believing love can be earned through fear, that if you just perform goodness perfectly enough, you'll be safe. But safety doesn't come from being understood by others. It comes from understanding yourself. Machiavelli once wrote that people are ungrateful, fickle, false, and at first it sounds cynical. But if you listen closely, he wasn't condemning humanity. He was freeing you from illusion. He was saying, stop expecting purity from chaos. Because when you expect goodness from those who haven't faced their own darkness, you invite disappointment. You start treating manipulation as a misunderstanding, cruelty as confusion, silence as dignity. You rewrite their harm as, maybe they're just hurting, and maybe they are. But that doesn't mean you must bleed for their healing. You can love people and still walk away. You can care deeply and still refuse to be diminished. Strength is not cruelty, it's clarity. It's saying, I see you, but I also see myself. You've lived too long in the shadow of other people's indecision, waiting for them to realize your worth, to come back, to change. But every moment spent waiting is a silent agreement that their timeline matters more than your peace. So stop waiting. Stop hoping they'll see what you see. Start seeing what's already true. You've been the healer for too long, the one who absorbs chaos, forgives betrayal, holds steady when everyone else falls apart. You've carried other people's storms like they were your own. But tell me, who holds you when you crumble? Who tends to your heart when you're empty from holding others? You've been afraid of power because you associate it with control, ego, cruelty. But real power, the kind that Machiavelli hinted at but few understand, is not domination. It's sovereignty. It's knowing that your emotions are your kingdom, and no one, no matter how charming, should be allowed to reign there without permission. So many people mistake love for surrender. They confuse devotion with self-erasure. But love without power is chaos, and power without love is emptiness. You need both the lion and the fox. The lion stands its ground. The fox sees through illusion. Together, they form wisdom. You cannot be only one. If you are all lion, you grow rigid, untouchable, armored, lonely. If you are all fox, you become clever but hollow, surviving, not living. But when you embody both, you walk with grace. You are neither prey nor predator. You are free. The people who used to intimidate you, the ones who made you question your worth, they start to lose their hold. Because now you see it. You see how much of their confidence was performance. You see how power often hides fear. And you stop reacting. You stop shrinking. That's control. Not the loud, destructive kind. The quiet kind. The kind that comes from knowing you no longer need to prove yourself to anyone. Sometimes that power begins with one simple act, saying nothing. You stop chasing closure. You stop explaining your silence. You let them wonder why your energy no longer reaches for them. That's when the dynamic shifts. People feel it when you stop chasing. They feel it in your tone, your timing, your absence. You become mystery again, not because you're playing a game, but because you've reclaimed your center. This is where your healing begins, in stillness, in the pause between wanting and waiting. in the realization that love is not something you hunt, it's something you create within yourself. There will be moments when loneliness bites, when silence feels unbearable. You'll be tempted to reach back to text, to explain, to reopen doors that led nowhere. But if you can endure that silence, something miraculous happens. The ache begins to transform. It stops feeling like loss and starts feeling like space. Space for something new, not another person, but another version of you. The one who doesn't chase, the one who doesn't beg, the one who doesn't confuse kindness with weakness. That version of you doesn't need to be chosen, they already are. You'll notice your energy shifting. The same people who used to ignore you start paying attention, but now you no longer need them to. You no longer crave validation, because you've become it. You've become the calm you were once searching for in others. And that's the secret most people never learn. Power doesn't come from being in control of others. It comes from being in control of yourself, of your emotions, your reactions, your silence. You'll realize that you can still love people deeply, but now, from a distance that doesn't destroy you. You can wish them well without wishing them back. You can honor what was without clinging to what's gone. And when you walk away this time, you'll do it without drama, without anger, without needing to be seen as the good one. You'll walk away because peace is worth more than proof. And as you leave, you'll feel something return, not pride, not vengeance, but dignity. The kind that hums quietly inside you saying, I no longer chase what's running from me. There's a certain kind of ache that doesn't scream anymore. It just hums. You know the ache that comes after years of hoping, fixing, explaining. You wake up one morning and you realize you don't have the energy to chase anyone's love anymore. Not because you've stopped caring, but because you finally understand what runs from you is not yours to hold. You used to think love meant patience, waiting, forgiving, giving one more chance. But now, patience feels different. It's no longer about enduring pain in silence. It's about holding your own heart gently, even when the world doesn't. You've learned that being too good can be dangerous, that it attracts those who feed on empathy, who take your light and call it theirs. You've seen how people confuse your understanding for permission, as if your forgiveness means you've forgotten. But you haven't forgotten. You've simply chosen peace over proof. That's the hardest part when you stop trying to prove your worth to people who benefit from your doubt. You realize that some will only love you as long as you stay small, as long as you keep apologizing for wanting more. There's a moment when you finally see it, how your own fear built the cage. You wanted to be loved so badly that you accepted half-truths, empty promises, conditional affection. You silenced your intuition just to stay close to someone who never really showed up. And when they left, you blamed yourself. You thought, if I'd just been better, softer, easier. But love that demands your silence isn't love. It's control. The world tells you that good people forgive endlessly. But no one tells you that forgiveness without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. That kindness without discernment turns you into prey. That's why Machiavelli's words still sting centuries later. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Most people read that and recoil, thinking it's cruel. But what if feared means respected? What if it means having enough presence that people think twice before they cross you? It's not about ruling others, it's about ruling yourself. Your reactions, your emotions, your boundaries. Because when you have self-respect, people feel it. It changes the energy in the room. You don't need to raise your voice or prove your point. Your silence becomes your power. Your absence becomes your answer. You used to think that being loved was the highest form of safety. But now you know being respected is the real protection. Love without respect will make you doubt yourself. Respect without love will make you lonely. But when both meet, that's when connection becomes freedom. And freedom, that's what you've been craving all along. You thought you wanted love, but what you really wanted was peace. To stop pretending, to stop fighting for crumbs of attention, to finally be seen without performing. You start to see how people reveal themselves, not through their words, but through their consistency. The ones who truly care don't need to be chased. They stay. They show up even when it's inconvenient. They don't make you question your worth every time they pull away. But when you live your whole life chasing love, success, validation, you forget how to receive. You forget that power isn't something you earn through exhaustion. It's something you reclaim through stillness. When you stop running, you start seeing clearly. You notice how much of your energy was tied to trying to control perception, to make people think you were good, worthy, lovable. But perception is a storm you can't steer. No matter how much you try, some people will always see you through the lens of their wounds. And that's not your burden to carry. The moment you realize that, something softens inside you. You stop explaining your goodness. You stop trying to convince those who misunderstand you. You let them go, not out of anger, but because you're tired of losing yourself trying to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. That's the power Machiavelli spoke of, not tyranny, but clarity. The courage to see people as they are, not as you wish them to be. To stop romanticizing potential and start acknowledging truth, because people show you who they are and how they treat you when you're no longer useful to them. Believe that the first time. Don't rewrite it into something prettier. Don't call it confusion when it's neglect. Don't call it love when it's control. You deserve a peace that doesn't come with conditions, a love that doesn't make you beg, a presence that doesn't need to be chased. And maybe you're not there yet. Maybe you still feel that pull to prove, to reach, to chase. That's okay. Every addiction starts with a need, and the need behind your chasing was always simple. You wanted to be seen. But here's the truth: the moment you see yourself, the chase ends. Because when you stop running after love, you realize it's been waiting inside you all along, not the kind that depends on someone else's approval, but the kind that grows in quiet strength, the kind that whispers, "I am enough, even when no one chooses me." That's where your real power lives. In the ability to sit with yourself without reaching for distraction. In the courage to stay when everyone else leaves. In the gentle strength of someone who no longer needs to prove their softness. You'll start to walk differently, speak differently. Your eyes will carry a kind of calm that unsettles those who once fed on your uncertainty, because nothing frightens the manipulative more than someone who no longer needs their validation. You won't need revenge. You won't need closure. Your peace will be the answer they never expected. That's when you'll understand power was never about control. It was about returning home. You will remember the exact moment when you stopped chasing. It won't be dramatic. There won't be music or revelation. It will happen in silence, a kind of stillness that feels almost holy. You'll look at your phone, see their name, and feel nothing. Not anger, not longing, just space. That's the first sign that the spell has broken. The grip of needing someone to validate you gone. The rush of adrenaline that used to come from their attention gone. What replaces it is strange at first. Emptiness. But beneath that emptiness, there's something waiting to be born: peace. You start to realize that peace was never about the absence of pain. It was about the presence of power. The quiet kind. The kind that no one sees but everyone feels. The kind that whispers, "I'm no longer afraid to lose what was never mine." You will mourn. Don't mistake your mourning for weakness. Grief doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. It means you cared. You showed up. You gave your heart honestly, even when it wasn't received the same way. That's something to honor, not hide. But you'll also start to notice how light you feel when you stop carrying people who refuse to walk beside you. You'll notice the way your body exhales differently, as if it's been waiting years for you to set it free. You'll begin to see how much of your suffering was tied to resistance, the belief that you could make things last by trying harder. You'll see how many times you confused control with love, attachment with care, fear with connection, and slowly, you'll start to laugh again. The real kind, the one that rises from your chest like forgiveness. Not the forgiveness that invites people back, but the kind that releases you from needing to rewrite the past. Machiavelli once said that fortune favors the bold. He meant that the world doesn't reward those who wait for permission. It bends for those who act, even when afraid. Boldness isn't loud. It's choosing yourself when everything in you still aches to be chosen by someone else. You will begin to see courage differently, not as battle, but as quiet defiance. Courage is deleting the message you'll never send. It's walking away while your heart still wants to stay. It's sitting alone on a Friday night and realizing that solitude is not punishment, it's preparation. You will start to understand the illusion of goodness, how often it was used to control you, to make you compliant, to make you believe that love means always giving in. But goodness without strength is submission, and submission, when unchosen, is a slow form of death. You were never meant to be endlessly accommodating. You were meant to be kind, yes, but also fierce. You were meant to be soft in heart, sharp in vision. The world needs both. Love without strength collapses. Strength without love corrupts. You are here to embody both. There's a reason the lion and the fox must live together. The lion stands tall in the sun, proud, visible, untouchable. The fox moves in shadow, aware, cunning, perceptive. One without the other is incomplete. Together, they become untouchable. That's you, learning to balance grace and discernment, compassion and distance, warmth and boundary. You'll learn to smile without offering your soul, to listen without absorbing, to love without losing. And it's strange, once you find that balance, life starts to meet you differently. Opportunities that used to slip away start to stay. People who once overlooked you begin to look twice, not because you've changed your appearance or tone, but because your energy has shifted. You've become someone who no longer negotiates their worth. When you walk into a room, people will feel it. Not intimidation, but presence. They won't know why, but they'll sense that you're not seeking their approval. You don't need to be liked anymore. You don't need to be chosen. You are complete, and that makes you magnetic. That's the paradox of control. The less you grasp, the more you attract. You begin to see truth everywhere, in the way people speak, in what they don't say, in the way they flinch when faced with your calm. You start to understand that those who manipulate thrive on reaction. They need chaos to stay powerful. But you've stopped giving them what they need. You've stopped reacting. Your silence will unsettle them. Your stillness will confuse them. Because for the first time, they can't control you. You've learned the art of non-engagement, not out of indifference, but out of mastery. And here's the thing, this new version of you doesn't need to announce boundaries. They simply exist. You no longer say, "I won't tolerate that." You simply don't. You no longer explain why you're leaving. You simply go. You no longer seek validation for your standards. You simply live by them. That's control. That's freedom. You'll lose people, yes, but you'll also gain yourself. You'll trade comfort for clarity, illusion for truth. And even though it hurts, it's a clean pain, the kind that heals instead of festers. Soon, you'll begin to attract differently. The kind of people who value peace over drama, depth over performance, intention over attention. And when they come, you'll recognize them instantly. They'll meet your energy, not drain it. They won't chase. They won't play. They'll match your stillness. But even then, you'll know you don't need them to feel whole. Because wholeness was never something you found in another. It was something you built in silence, brick by brick, every time you chose not to chase. When you reach this point, you'll realize something simple, almost too simple to believe. Power was never something to learn. It was something to remember. You were born with it. The world just taught you to forget. You will notice something strange when you stop chasing. People who once ignored you will start reaching out. Not because they've changed, but because they feel the shift. They can sense that your energy no longer revolves around them, and it unsettles them. It's human nature. When something is no longer easily available, it becomes valuable. But here's the truth. Their renewed interest is not proof of love. It's proof of habit. They've lost the comfort of your attention, and they want it back. Not because they intend to stay, but because they miss being the center of your gravity. Don't mistake nostalgia for connection. Don't confuse their curiosity for care. People return when their lives go quiet, when their new distractions lose their shine. But what's gone quiet in them shouldn't disturb your peace again. You don't owe anyone a second chance. at the version of you they destroyed. You'll feel the temptation to respond, to prove that you've healed, to show them what they lost. But that too is chasing. Healing doesn't need witnesses. Closure doesn't require an audience. You don't need them to see your strength to know it exists. The greatest power you'll ever hold is indifference, not coldness, but serenity. The kind that doesn't come from pride, but from understanding. You no longer seek revenge or recognition. You've transcended the game entirely. When you reach that place, life begins to feel lighter. You'll laugh again, without waiting for someone to notice. You'll dance alone in your kitchen, without thinking of who's watching. You'll sit in silence and realize it no longer feels empty. It feels full, because now silence isn't absence. It's protection. You used to fear losing people. Now you fear losing yourself. You used to crave being understood. Now you crave peace. You used to equate power with control. Now you see it's simply self-respect, the kind that doesn't need to prove its worth through others' reactions. You start to realize that you never lost your power. You just gave it away every time you over-explained, over-apologized, over-gave. Every time you stayed where your spirit was starving. Every time you said, "It's okay," when it wasn't. But you're learning now. You're learning that saying no is holy, that walking away is sacred, that not everyone deserves access to your heart. Machiavelli understood something most people still don't. That kindness without strength invites chaos. Because human nature, for all its beauty, can be selfish. Most people act not out of malice but convenience. They take what's easy, not what's right. That's why you must learn to guard your energy as fiercely as your breath. You can be kind without being accessible. You can be warm without being consumed. When you start living this way, you'll notice a quiet transformation. The world begins to treat you differently. You'll no longer attract those who drain you. You'll no longer entertain those who confuse effort with entitlement. You'll start to magnetize those who see your strength as an equal, not as a threat. Because true connection doesn't ask you to shrink. It expands with you. And yet, you'll have moments of doubt. You'll question if you're being too distant, too cold. You'll wonder if maybe you've built walls instead of boundaries. But you'll know the difference by how it feels. Walls are built from fear. Boundaries are built from self-trust. When you trust yourself, everything changes. You stop chasing clarity from others. You stop demanding reassurance. You start listening to your intuition, the voice that never lied to you, only got drowned out by your need to be loved. That voice becomes your compass. It tells you when to stay, when to leave, when to speak, and when to let silence speak for you. It will sound small at first, but the more you honor it, the louder it becomes. And eventually, you'll reach a place where you no longer fear solitude. You'll see that being alone is not a punishment. It's a sanctuary. The space where you meet the person you abandoned trying to please everyone else. You'll look in the mirror and see someone new, not harder, but wiser. Someone who no longer needs chaos to feel alive. Someone who no longer mistakes intensity for intimacy. Someone who no longer measures love by how much it hurts. You'll learn that love doesn't need to be chased, fixed, or earned. Love, when it's real, meets you halfway. It doesn't demand your silence to feel safe. It doesn't require your suffering to prove devotion. It simply exists quietly, steadily, without conditions. That's when you'll understand that power and love were never enemies. They were meant to coexist. Power protects love. Love humanizes power. One without the other becomes distortion. You'll see how strength and softness can live in the same heartbeat. How you can say no with compassion. How you can leave without hatred. How you can care without losing yourself. That's what it means to become whole again. Not perfect, not untouchable, whole. And as you rise into that wholeness, you'll start to inspire others, not by preaching, but by being, by showing that peace is possible, that strength can be gentle, that clarity can be kind. People will ask you how you did it. They'll say, "You seem different." And you'll smile because you'll know it wasn't one big moment. It was 1,000 small choices. Every time you stopped explaining, every time you didn't chase, every time you chose silence over reaction. You found power, in the pause. You stopped running from loneliness and met yourself there. You realized that control isn't about force, it's about faith. Faith that what's meant for you doesn't need chasing. Faith that you can let go and still be held by life, by grace, by yourself. That's the truth Machiavelli never said outright. But maybe he meant it. Real control is not over others. It's over your fear. When you finally stop chasing, life doesn't immediately reward you with comfort. It tests you first. It sends echoes of the old world to see if you've really changed familiar faces, familiar patterns, familiar temptations dressed in new disguises. They whisper, maybe this time will be different. And for a moment, you want to believe them. Because part of you still longs to return to what's familiar, even when it hurt. But you know now that healing isn't the absence of pain. It's the courage to stay awake through it. So you don't fall for the illusion again. You see it for what it is. An invitation to repeat the lesson you've already learned. You remember the cost, the exhaustion, the self-doubt, the way you used to wait for crumbs and call it love. You remember, and you choose differently. That's how you know you're growing, when peace feels better than excitement. When you no longer crave the high of being wanted for a moment, because you've tasted the calm of being valued consistently. You begin to see how much of the world runs on illusion people, pretending to be kind for approval, pretending to be confident for control, pretending to be whole while they bleed quietly inside. It's everywhere, this theater of masks. But you've stepped off that stage. Now you crave something else. Authenticity. People who don't perform goodness, but live it quietly. People whose actions match their words. People who don't need to be convinced to care. You realize that seeing people as they are, not as you wish, is the highest form of love, because it allows you to love without illusion, to forgive without enabling, to stay grounded in truth even when your heart wants fantasy. Machiavelli said that fortune favors the bold, but boldness isn't recklessness. It's honesty. It's standing naked in truth when the world would rather you be beautifully deceived. And it takes courage to be that honest. Courage to say, I love you, but I won't chase you. Courage to admit that not everything broken can be fixed. Courage to face yourself without running. You learn to hold both love and loss, hope and reality. You stop needing one to erase the other. You stop demanding that life makes sense before you trust it. There's freedom in that surrender. Not the weak kind, but the sacred kind. The kind that says, I can't control everything, but I can control how I meet it. And that's when your power starts to move differently. It's no longer sharp or defensive. It's soft, patient, unhurried. You walk through the world without explaining, without competing, without grasping. You move with a kind of quiet authority that makes others lean in, because they can feel that you're no longer at war with yourself. It's strange how life responds to that. Doors that used to stay closed begin to open. Opportunities appear, not because you chased them, but because you aligned with them. Relationships begin to mirror the peace you carry. The world rearranges itself around your new stillness. That's what happens when you stop forcing and start allowing. You stop pushing against the current and realize the river was always flowing toward you. You'll begin to attract not just people, but peace. The kind of peace that doesn't ask you to shrink or hide. The kind that feels like coming home. And yet, power can be lonely at first, because most people don't understand it. They mistake your calm for distance. They call your boundaries arrogance. They'll say, you've changed, not realizing that change was survival. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand. You no longer need to be known by everyone. You only need to be true to yourself. It's a strange thing once you stop chasing. The world seems quieter. You hear the wind again. You notice how the sunlight moves through your room in the morning. You start paying attention to details you once rushed past. You start living, not performing. You realize that control isn't about holding everything tightly. It's about trusting that nothing real can be taken from you. The people meant for you will never require you to abandon yourself to keep them. The opportunities meant for you will never make you betray your peace to earn them. The love meant for you will never ask you to chase it. You start to see that life itself is a balance between letting go and standing firm, between surrender and strength. And that balance is where freedom lives. You'll still fall sometimes. You'll still have moments of weakness, we all do. You'll still miss people who weren't good for you. You'll still feel the pull of old patterns. Because healing isn't a straight line, it's a spiral. You circle the same lessons until you finally meet them with grace instead of fear. When that happens, forgive yourself. You are not broken for slipping. You are human for feeling. What matters is that you return faster each time, that you catch yourself before you drown. That's control, not perfection awareness. And awareness is power. Because the truth is, the world doesn't owe you gentleness, but you owe it to yourself. To protect your peace like sacred ground, to speak softly to your wounds, to remember that you don't need to be ruthless to be strong. You just need to be real. One day, someone will meet you in this truth. They won't be intimidated by your calm. They won't mistake your boundaries for walls. They'll see the power in your softness, the wisdom in your restraint. And when that happens, you'll realize something beautiful. You didn't have to chase love after all. You just had to stop running from yourself. There's a peace that comes when you finally stop begging life to give you what you were always capable of creating yourself. It's a quiet kind of power, the kind that doesn't shout or prove, the kind that doesn't need validation to exist. You wake up one morning, and for the first time, you feel free. Not because everything has gone your way, but because you no longer need it to. That's the moment you understand what control really means. It's not about forcing life into obedience. It's about knowing you'll be okay even if it disobeys. You used to think strength was about endurance, holding on, forgiving endlessly, waiting for people to see your worth. But now you see that strength is sometimes the art of release. It's saying, I wish you well, but not at the cost of myself. It's walking away, not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring about yourself. And you'll realize something profound. All that chasing you once did wasn't really about them. It was about your own fear. The fear of being unseen, unloved, unchosen. Every text you sent, every apology you gave, every time you begged for understanding, it wasn't about love. It was about survival. You thought that if you could just make them stay, you'd be safe. But safety never comes from being chosen. It comes from choosing yourself. It takes time to understand that, to unlearn the belief that love must hurt to be real, to believe that calmness doesn't mean boredom, that peace doesn't mean emptiness. You've lived so long in chaos that stability feels foreign. But give it time. Soon, peace will start to feel like home. You'll begin to see how illusion ruled so much of your life, how you mistook attention for affection, flattery for love, control for care. You'll see how the world glorifies the chase, how it romanticizes pain and calls it passion. But pain isn't proof of depth. It's just proof of hunger, the hunger to be seen, to be chosen, to be enough. You'll start to crave something quieter, connection without control, love without anxiety, presence without performance. That's when you'll understand the truest meaning of Machiavelli's law, that real power lies not in conquest, but in composure. The ability to stay centered when the world demands reaction. The ability to look at rejection and not crumble. The ability to love deeply without losing your shape. Because control is not coldness, it's grace. It's the soft refusal to abandon yourself for anyone's comfort. When you reach that place, you start to look at your past with gentler eyes. You stop blaming yourself for not knowing better. You stop shaming yourself for loving too much. You see that all the chasing, all the yearning, all the heartbreak, it was never wasted. It was initiation. Pain was the teacher that showed you where your power was hiding. Every time you broke, something false fell away. Every time you lost someone, you found a piece of yourself. Every disappointment was a doorway, and behind each one waited a truth you were finally ready to see. You'll start to forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you do. Because holding on to resentment ties you to the very energy you escaped. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's detachment. It's saying, I release you, but I also release me. You'll stop needing to prove how much you've healed. You'll just live it. You'll stop needing to post, to announce, to perform your growth. People will feel it in your energy, in your silence, your eyes, your steadiness. You'll realize that peace doesn't need an audience. It simply exists. And then, something even more beautiful happens. You start to give differently. Not out of fear, not out of lack, but from overflow. Your love becomes quieter but stronger. You no longer need to be everything for everyone. You just need to be real. You'll draw people who match that energy, grounded, whole, gentle. The kind of souls who understand that love isn't about possession but presence, who don't need to be chased because they never leave what's sacred. And even when you're alone, it won't feel like loneliness anymore. It will feel like alignment, like you're standing in the exact place you were meant to all along. The world around you won't change, but your relationship to it will. You'll no longer see others as threats or saviors. You'll stop trying to manage how people see you. You'll stop fearing what they might take away, because you'll realize what's truly yours cannot be taken. You'll find strength in simplicity, joy in quiet things, a walk at sunset, music that touches something ancient inside you, conversations that don't demand performance, moments that feel real. And in those moments, you'll understand something timeless. The highest form of power is peace. You don't need to be feared. You don't even need to be loved in the way you once thought. You just need to be respected by others, yes, but most of all by yourself. You'll stop bowing to potential and start honoring reality. You'll stop praying for people to come back and start thanking them for leaving. You'll stop chasing closure and start creating it within. And one night, perhaps quietly, without tears or noise, you'll whisper to yourself, "I'm proud of you." Because you'll realize that what you've built is not just a new life, but a new way of being. You no longer chase. You attract. You no longer beg. You choose. You no longer lose yourself. You return to yourself over and over again. And here you are, still, breathing, whole. You've walked through the ache, through the illusion, through the endless chasing that never gave you peace. And finally, you've arrived at something softer, something truer, yourself. There's no applause when this happens. No audience, just quiet. The kind of quiet that once terrified you now feels like grace. You sit in it, and for the first time you don't reach for anything. You let the silence hold you. You let it tell you the truth, that nothing outside of you was ever meant to complete you. You used to believe that love would save you, that if someone saw you clearly, deeply, completely, everything broken would make sense. But now you understand, being seen means nothing if you can't see yourself. You can't receive what you don't believe you deserve. So you begin to live differently, slower, deeper. You no longer confuse movement with meaning. You no longer give to prove your goodness. You no longer beg to be understood. You just are. And in that being, life starts to soften around you. You find joy in small things again, the taste of morning coffee, the way sunlight spills across your floor, the laughter that comes without warning. You stop waiting for the world to change and start becoming the change you were waiting for. That's the secret. No one tells you peace doesn't arrive. You become it. All those years you spent trying to control, to fix, to chase, they weren't wasted. They were the lessons that brought you here. They were the fire that forged your strength. They were the mirror that showed you who you are when everything else is stripped away. You have learned what Machiavelli truly meant, that control is not manipulation, but mastery. Mastery of self. That it's better to be respected than adored when love demands your erasure. That courage is not loud. It's the quiet act of staying true to your truth, even when the world doesn't understand. You have become both lion and fox, powerful yet perceptive, bold yet wise. You no longer roar for attention or hide for approval. You move with purpose. You see with clarity. You live with peace. And if you ever forget, if you ever feel the pull to chase again, remember this. What's meant for you will never run from you. It will meet you in stillness, not in pursuit. It will feel like calm, not chaos. It will see your strength and never ask you to dim it. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are becoming. And as you listen to these words, let them sink into you not as advice, but as remembrance. You've always known this truth. You just needed to come home to it. So if this found you at the right time, if something inside you exhaled for the first time in years, stay. Share this space with someone who still chases what hurts them. Follow along not for me, but for yourself. For the part of you that still believes in rising again, because this isn't the end, it's the beginning, the quiet beginning of your return to power, peace, and truth.